Hello, boys and girls. It's Mr. Mouse, and I hope you're doing really well. It is a beautiful day, and it's it's been great hearing from some of you and from some of your parents. And it's just been it's not the same. I've been saying that, I know, a lot, but it's not the same not being in the school building and not being able to see you all. But again, I hope you're all doing well. And can you believe that we actually had snow on Friday? I can't believe it. I just can't believe it. But it was kind of cool to look out the window and just see all the snow coming down. I was actually in my car. I had to go grab some necessary things, and I saw some of the snow coming down on my window, and it was really, really cool to watch the snow coming down on my windshield. So that was cool. Anyways, so I kind of wanted to do, I've done this with some of my older students, but I wanted to do this with you because the activity that you're going to get this week is going to be an activity in which you're going to talk to a family member and kind of ask them what kind of music they grew up with. Okay? So that's your activity this week. But in order to get you ready for that activity, I wanted to kind of give you some information about the music that they might have grown up with. So, without further ado, pop, pop, pop music, kindergarten and first grade edition. So, pop music is, well, it's kind of like rock and roll, but it's not just rock and roll. It's a whole bunch of other music. It's usually easy. It's a lot. It's around 2 to 3 minutes. It's very easy to dance to, and it repeats itself a lot. And it's usually very romantic or lovey-dovey, or it has to do with dancing, or something like that. Um, and the rhythms are usually, we like to say, off the beat. Okay, so they're a little. You might feel like something's off, or you might hear something's off with the rhythms, and that's okay with pop music. But we'll talk about that in a couple years or so. All right? In pop music, the song is usually sung from the point of the singer or about the singer. Now, I'm just going to warn you right now, I'm going to be going a little bit fast. So if I go a little too fast, feel free to rewind the video at any point. Or go back in the video at some point. Why do I say rewind? I don't have a video. This is whatever. All right, let's take a look. So we kind of have to look by the different times music existed. So the 1950s, the 60s, the 70s, the 1980s. So I'm going to start at the 1960s because that's when pop music was really started to become pop music. So the 1960s. This was a time where there was unfortunately some war going on. But there was some music that came out during this time called soul music. And soul music was a combination of a few different kinds of music: gospel, rhythm and blues, and jazz. It was very catchy, very easy to listen to, and it had call and response. You know, the da 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 da. We've talked about that before. Soul music repeats itself over and over and over again, and soul music makes use of a lot of different instruments, but mostly horns and saxophones. So, maybe some of your parents know about these artists like Stevie Wonder, Ray Charles is one of my favorites. Aretha Franklin, yup, I love Aretha Franklin. Michael Jackson, the Supremes, John Legend, and Adele. So, the first one we are going to listen to is Walk On By.
If you see me walking down the street and I start to cry each time we meet, walk on by, walk on by.
So this is an original performance by Diane Warwick is her name. Sorry, Dionne Warwick. So you'll notice there's some horns, and she sings Walk On By quite a few times, doesn't she? Right? And you hear the rhythms are a little bit off if you're listening very, very carefully. We gotta really, really listen. Whoop. Gotta really listen. Okay. So, 1960s. So, we had the group called the Beatles. They came all the way from England. And we also had a group called the Rolling Stones. And they came all the way from England too. So, both of these groups kind of made their way here to the United States. And they were very, very popular. And the Beatles' first recording, I Want to Hold Your Hand, you know, the I want to hold your hand, I want to hold your hand. Maybe you've heard that one? That sold 1 million copies in a week. Now, that was a lot of copies. And you think about it, they didn't have the internet, they didn't have the fancy schmancy computers we have now, when they didn't have MP3s and, cell phones or anything like that. So it's not like they could just share the music wherever they could. They had to sell these by records. So that's a lot of copies of music. And that's just a week, 7 days. It's pretty credible. And these are some other famous artists. We said the Beatles, Peter, Paul, and Mary, Santana, Frank Sinatra, Neil Diamond, Chuck Berry. I mean, these were all great artists. Your parents probably know most of them. The 1970s, funk and disco. Funk is a little bit different. It's rock and roll and a little bit of soul. And again, what's most noticeable about funk, it's noticeable about funk, is the bass line. So you're going to hear this big booming bass. And the rhythm never stops moving. Never, never, never. So let's see if we can hear some examples of, disco. Sorry, I forgot all about disco. How could I forget about disco? It's one of my favorites, disco. The rhythms are smooth. The melodies are smooth. We've talked about what a melody is. A melody is the main idea of a song, right? The disco is easy. It's easy to dance to. All right? And they had all these lights and special effects, right? So funk artists are James Brown, Earth, Wind, and Fire. They do the Do You Remember the Good Old Days, September? The Temptations, Michael Jackson, and then disco we've got the Village People, Cher. Michael Jackson is both a funk and a disco artist. Ooh, interesting. So, Let's see. Let's take a look at Superstition. This is Stevie Wonder.
Ladies and gentlemen, ladies and very superstitious.
I bet many of you have heard this song before.
Very superstitious. Let us start the fall. Touching bumps on baby. Struck by a blind. 7 years of bad love. Get the things in your side. And you believe.
Okay, so the reason that one is considered funk is because of that bass line there. Right? We talked about how funk with that bass line always kind of shows up. Well, that bass line shows up quite a bit, right? And that rhythm, the rhythms, right? So I keep doing that again. All right. Disco. We Are Family. Now you notice the rhythms here are a little bit smoother. Skip ahead. I forgot how long the beginning of this is. Okay, so that's definitely disco. So 1980s. Now we start getting into the rock and more rock, right? So we get into hard, alternative, and soft rock, and then we got into even rap music, right? And hip hop. That's when we got into that stuff. Hard rock, we started having more electric guitars, bass guitars, and drums. And in hard rock, the guitar stands out. And in hard rock, we have bands like AC/DC. So like Queen, for example. Queen is a great example.
Open your eyes, look up to the skies and see. I'm just a cool boy, I need no sympathy, 'cause I'm easy come, easy go, little high, little low. Any way the wind blows doesn't really matter to me.
So that's a good example of hard rock, right? So these are good examples of what hard rock was. Well, the other examples I would have shown was AC/DC. I have to fix the video on that one because it's not quite working right. Okay, alternative rock. It's a bit different than the rest of the rock and rolls. And soft rock was a lighter use of instruments. Chicago, the Doobie Brothers. Those songs like Keep on Loving You, I Want to Know What Love Is. And then the 90s and 2000s, we had the boy bands like NSYNC, Britney Spears, right? Um, and those kind of songs like Bye Bye Bye, Oops, I Did It Again. So those kind of songs are what we hear, well, I grew up with, right? So that's where we kind of are today in terms of our music. So this was a short lesson, well, not a short lesson, but I wanted to give you an idea of where music has come from the 1950s to now, so that you can do your activity this week on um, on when you try to talk to a family member and ask them what kind of music they grew up with. I'll be interested to hear some of the responses you came up with. Now, with the activity, you don't have to answer every question or ask every question um, to the family member, but try to ask a couple, okay? All right. Have a great week and hope to hear from you soon. Take care.